What's up, guys? So as far as your furnace not working in the wintertime, I know you could have used this the last few days, but tomorrow's supposed to be cold as well. So let's just say your furnace stops working. The number one thing you want to do is replace your filter. There is a code that actually beeps on your furnace. There's an LED light, and it goes boom, 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 and it does it in segments, two segments. One number and then another number. And if it's 33, that means it's hit a limit switch, meaning that it's just reached its limit of how much heat it can withstand before the limit pops. Sometimes they're manual, a lot of times they're automatic resets. But what I mean by that is that LED light that flashes that code is on the number that it flashes is on your furnace, and it says what it is. So if it's a pressure switch, certain things that are harder to evaluate, see if those are messed up. But one thing that's really easy is that limit switch, right? So if it's a limit switch, it probably just means your furnace is not breathing correctly. So make sure you've changed your filter. That's the number one thing I recommend. I've saved people a lot of money for service calls. You want to make sure your thermostat has batteries that are good. So batteries that are good in the thermostat, and then your limit switch LED, if that's what it is, if it's 33, which most likely is the number on your furnace, that you have replaced your filter. Because having a dirty filter or a super allergen protected filter where basically it's super thick and your furnace can't breathe, when your furnace is trying to run all day in this freezing cold weather, that super thick filter is actually going to prevent it from breathing, right? So this is what a filter should look like. A lot of the times they bend in because there's so much pressure being pulled in. Even if it's not super dirty, it may just need to breathe. So either having the filter out completely or just getting a really cheap one is what I recommend. As always, getting a cheap filter and just putting it in for the winter and in the summer, because you don't really need a super thick filter unless you have a lot of allergy problems. So check those two things out before you spend a bunch of money. There's a lot of other tips and tricks I could say, but those are the two biggest ones: batteries in your thermostat, and then the filter. Make sure it's just clean and new. All right, two important things to remember is that if your furnace is blowing cold air, that means it's not the blower motor. The blower motor is a good sign that the furnace is not something more sophisticated, because the blower motor pushes the hot air away. So if the blower motor just doesn't turn on, you're not getting that cold air, then that's a bigger problem. Then it might be the motor. But let's say that's working. The other thing is that if the limit switch does blow, it takes about 30 minutes for it to automatically reset. That's why the house gets cold. So if a surefire way to test that is you go into the room with the furnace and you have that on and off light switch. You turn it off and then you turn it back on. There's about a minute or two cool down period, and then the furnace should kick back on. If it kicks back on, that's a great sign. That means that it's not something more sophisticated. That just means that it did cut off on limit switch. That's just another reassurance of that. And most likely it's just because the limit was reached, and there's a reason for that, whether it couldn't breathe or the blower motor. There's a lot of reasons why, but those are two main reasons. This has saved a lot of money for a lot of my friends. And lastly, another thing that happens is, I know everybody doesn't want to just go open up to the furnace, but the flame sensor, that nasty flame sensor, there's a little probe that goes right by the burners where if it doesn't recognize that there's a flame and sends an electrical signal to the unit, then it will shut itself off. So this is an awesome thing to see. If you open up the front panel and your burners start going for like a second or two, then they turn off, that it means that they didn't recognize that there was a flame. That electrical signal on that little probe wasn't sent. So a lot of times you just take I believe it's a 1/4 inch little socket, you unscrew it, it's just one screw, and then you pull it out and you rub it with either like some abrasive material, some sandpaper, something like that. Not too crazy, but you scrub it down, get that white charcoaly stuff off of it, and then you put it back in. And if the burners stay on next time, then that means it's your flame sensor. But again, you'll see the code that flashes on your front furnace panel or in the unit. It says LED codes as to which one it is. If it says flame sensor, that's what that little thing is.